Hi. All right. So I wanted you guys all to be in here to be able to make this awesome little sleigh in person, but that's not happening. So to make this cutie, I'm just going to put them back on this little stand, move them out of the way. They come in this raw wood. So there's a really pretty grain on here. And they have these little keyholes are routed in the back already. And you'll see these are the skis. And see, the skis have 3 screws on each one. And that fits in those keyholes, and then they slide up. This is pretty loose. You see that's pretty loose? So all you do is just take a screwdriver, it's just a standard Robertson head screwdriver, and just tighten them a little bit. You kind of have to try it out after you've painted it and stuff. But that's how they go together. Super, super simple. So there's the skis. This one's kind of loose. The skis go on. I'm just going to tilt you so you can see. Sorry about my low budget production here. There you go. So see, it's sitting on his skis, and then same thing with the top. Just gotta find the little hole. There you go. And they just slide down, locks in, and when it's all tightened up, it fits. So that's it. All together. Okay, so what you're getting in your class, these are the skis. These are the skis that go on your sleigh. This is this little top piece, this little green piece. That's this right here. And then of course, I call this the body. We'll just call it the body. This is the body of your sleigh. And this have the little keyholes on the back so that you can easily slide them onto your skis. And like I said earlier, if you find that it's too loose, just take a screwdriver and just by hand, don't use a drill, just a hand screwdriver, and just screw them in like a quarter turn at a time and try. You don't want to be too rough or too tight you don't want to break this. There's just a little lip here and you don't want to break that, so don't force it. You just want it to be snug enough that it'll fit together tightly and it'll stay together. If you want it to be super secure, if you have it all set up, you've dry fitted it and everything works great, put a little bit of glue on here and then that'll hold it more secure for permanent. So that's totally up to you. I would just use a normal wood glue. I use the LePage glue here all the time for everything, and it works awesome. I have no complaints. So you will the first thing that I do is you have red paint. Paint your sleigh body with the red. There's more than enough in here to do the whole thing front and back and the sides. And then, as I showed you, you can wipe the paint off or water this down substantially, and then wipe it off, and you'll get this kind of stained look where you can see the wood grain through. It'll work, the paint will work as a stain instead, which is a super awesome bonus. So red for the body. There's a little bit of green here for this piece. This isn't very big, it won't take a lot. Same thing. This doesn't have as much grain visible as you can maybe see with the lighting. But I distressed it same way, just with a wet cloth, as I showed you. For your skis, they're the runners or skis or whatever you want to call them. I'm assuming they're runners. It's a sleigh. This is dark and decrepit. This can also be watered down. There's lots in here. This can also be watered down and used for a little bit more of a distressed look. But there's enough in here to paint it on. It's a little bit more runny than the paint, so there's a lot in here. And this gives you just that nice brown, warm stain. And then this, of course, little bit of white is for your stenciling. So that's what's included in your kit. I'm also including the little jute rope for your handle. Just lay it there, make it look cute. And I will be, when you guys come in to pick up your kit, I'm going to ask you what kind of ribbon you want. And it's just a simple bow, nothing fancy, just a bow. All the ribbons have the wire edges, so it just gives it that little bit of girly. It looks nice. I think it looks nice with the ribbon. So that is it. I just have it sitting. You can lean it up anywhere. See, the back I didn't distress. The back is just straight paint with the clear coat. Once you finish the whole piece, that's when you fit it together. Don't try to paint it when it's all together. That's just going to be a pain in the butt for you. It's way easier to do it when it's all separate pieces. Especially the stenciling part, you're going to want to do that. And I just have I have a few of these big, heavy easels, and it works good to hold it on there. But you can just lean it up on the wall somewhere and display your cute little project. All of these sleighs are spoken for, so of course I can't show you on a sleigh because I've already done mine. So what I've done is I have this little barn-shaped block, and I have a small version of the same stencil that you guys are going to have, or whichever one you chose out of the three. I'm going to use this one. So what I've done, I've painted this whole thing, and I have done the sealer coat on the back and all the way around the edges. And that's the same thing you're going to want to do with your sleigh. But I'm going to show you how to get this really nice, kind of just a red stain look. You can see that it just looks like a stain. And I'm going to show you how to achieve that quickly here. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so all I've done, this is just a rag, basically. Nothing fancy, just a rag. And I'm going to tilt you down so you can see. Actually, I'm going to lift you up so I can see, and you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. So I'm just using this rag. It's wet. It's not like dripping wet, but it's wet. And I'm going to start basically kind of scrubbing, wiping the paint off. And you can see after a couple wipes, see how the wood is showing through? Ooh. And this is going to give you that stained wood. Look at that. Now you can see all the wood grain through. And it's still wet, so once this dries, we're going to put the top coat on. Buzz with the heat gun to make sure it's dry. One of the best things about this paint line is it dries really fast. If you're still impatient, see how chalky that looks compared to the sealed part? That'll all match once we put the big top on. So you will see in your kit, you have, it says big top coat on a tiny little label right on the top, so you know what everything is. I should also mention that you guys are all getting, there's a lot of red paint in here, and if you choose to just paint your sleigh red and you don't want to distress it like I did, the wet distressing, you don't have to. There's more than enough paint in here for you to just do a solid red coat. But if you do want to, you can water this down. So you can always just pour some of this in a smaller or in another container and add a bunch of water. Remember, you can water down DIY paint 50-50. before you lose pigment. So if you're using it as a stain, water away. And then you can save your extra paint for some other project. But there's lots there. So once you've got your piece, your sleigh all painted, just gonna put a clear coat on here. And you're just getting it on. It doesn't have to be crazy because you're gonna be sealing it again after. So just get it on, try not to get any runs. And there you go. I mean, I know it's going to take you guys a little bit longer than that because you got a little bit of a bigger piece. But see how rich red that looks now? It's beautiful. We're using Carnival red, by the way. Okay, so I'm just going to get this to dry completely and I'll be back with the stencil. Okay, so it's all dry. See how pretty that looks? I really like using this paint as a stain. It comes out really, really nice. It's the same, I did the same thing on the green on this part right here. I'll be honest with you guys, and how that happened, it was actually by accident. Because when I was making this sample for the class, I stamped the lettering on here and I screwed up with the snowflake stamps and they looked awful. So I was trying to wash them off and of course it washes off the paint, and then I saw the wood grain and I'm like, ooh, that looks even better. So ta-da! And I love it. I love it this way. But like I said, you don't have to do it that way. Okay, so these little stencils are cut out of vinyl, so they're not super thick and they are only one-time use. You're not going to be able to peel this off and reuse it, not with an intricate design like this. Sometimes with something a little plainer, you might be able to get away with using it a couple times. But so I'm going to bring the camera down so you can actually see this a little bit better. You don't have to see me, you just need to see what I'm doing. So, how is that going to work? Okay, so here's the plan. This is what we do. We have to take, I have to get my glasses, sorry. Okay, I've got my glasses on. I can see now. Okay, so the first step is you'll see when you separate that you want all the blue stuff to stay on this piece. You want the shiny plasticky kind of backing to all come off. So I'm just going to actually rub over this really well to make sure it's all stuck to this transfer paper. That does not like me shaking the table. It wants to fall off all the time. Okay. So this is why I wanted to show this to you, because it can be a little bit finicky. Trying to make sure you guys can still see. That seems to be working a little bit better when you put it down like this and just kind of roll it off. There we go. Okay, so see, clean, no blue bits. That's what you want. And now this is not really see-through, but you can see your stencil. So you want to make sure that you get it on your sleigh fairly evenly. And we're just going to rub that on there. because this stencil product is not made, it's made to be removable. So it's not like a vinyl sticker that's going to stick and be permanent, right? Okay. So now what we have to do to show our stencil, which is the blue part, we need to take this transfer paper off and leave the blue on the piece. So again, what I found a good way to do that is to just hold it down flat like that and slowly peel it back on a diagonal. And see how it's all staying? You want every little piece to stay on here, on your piece, not on this paper. So just go slow, and you can watch along this line to make sure none of the blue is coming with it. There's a little bit wanting to poke up, so I'm going to push it down. And just go slowly. You take your time at this stage. It'll be worth it. There we go. So transfer paper is off, and I'm just going to stick it on here. I read somewhere you can reuse this transfer paper, so I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work, but so there you go. It's pretty straight. I did a decent job of lining that up. So now my stencil is applied to my piece, and now the stenciling fun starts. So I'm going to get that stuff ready, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've included in your kit this little, you don't need very much, so this is white paint. White Swan, actually, this stuff. And this is what we're going to use for the stencil. And all I do, I just have an old piece, this is just an old piece of cardboard. And you just take a little bit of your paint. With stenciling, you don't need a lot. And I supplied you with these, they're like makeup sponges. They work really good for stenciling. So just load some paint on your makeup brush and then offload it like that. Load some paint on and then dab it off. You don't want there to be a lot. And then you just go over your stencil in just up and down dabbing motions. And you do that to the whole thing. You don't rub it. You just make sure you get your full coverage. Because if you put too much paint on at one time, you can see how it's kind of thin. But I'm just putting a thin coat on to start with, and then I'll go back over it. This paint dries so fast, and especially when you're just doing a thin coat like this, it's practically drying as you're applying it. These little makeup sponges work really good for stenciling. They're a little more forgiving than using a brush. A brush, the bristles, if you push too hard, and you're using a traditional stencil, the acetate ones, you can actually push the bristles like underneath your stencil, and then you end up with a lot of bleed through, they call it, and it just makes your stencil, you don't have nice crisp lines. So this is just the plan for the whole image. a little bit time consuming, but it's not so bad. It's kind of relaxing. If you're doing big stenciling projects, I listen to audiobooks a lot. So in my truck, when I'm driving, I'm listening to books or podcasts, or it's kind of a good time to just kind of zone out and get your stenciling going. And then end up with a really pretty project. That's the best part. And it's up to you how opaque you want this. If you want it kind of rusticy and see-through and not perfect, then that works too. If you want a nice, bright, white, crisp white, then it might take a couple coats. Because like this is not going to be bright. So see how you can still see that's kind of pinky? I'm going to go over it again. Need a little bit more paint. And I'm just going to go over the whole thing again. And you can see it's like this is kind of tedious. But you get such a good result if you just take the time to do it. This method of doing stencils gives you a way better look, I think, anyways. I've never been a fan of the traditional stencil projects with the very obviously stenciled. I don't know if you know what I mean, but you can tell that it's a stencil. It's got the little lines through the letters, and if I use that kind of a stencil, I do have some of those stencils, and if I use them, I always go back and I touch it up after to get rid of all of those little telltale marks. I just think it looks cleaner. But this method, when you're using a vinyl stencil like this, you don't get that. Another reason why we do the clear coat first is it protects your paint. It gives you that little bit of a buffer in between your paint, your base coat paint, and your stencil color. Because if you're familiar with using DIY paint, you'll know that your second coat of paint can reactivate that first coat. And then you could end up pulling it off. It's one of those things. The best part about the paint is its ability to blend and the pigment and the ability to use it as a stain if you water it down. But those are also the qualities that make it a little bit more challenging when you're doing something like this. So I found these little workarounds where I can still use a product that I love because it has no smell and it does most of the things that drew me to it in the first place, the blending and all of that other stuff. I just found ways to work with it so I can do all this other stuff too. And that's what I like showing you guys, because it's truly a really good paint line. All right. Well, I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty decent coverage. You can still see a little bit of pink, but I'm not too worried about that. So you don't have to wait for it to dry. I like to take it off when it's still kind of damp, just because I find your chances of peeling paint are less. You just have to be careful that you don't touch your stencil. So this is the part where you're just going to be pulling it off. So just grab your blue and pull. Trying not to touch those pulled parts back. So you can see where I can, oops, you don't want to do that. You can see where on here where I was a little heavy-handed with the paint. See my S? See that bleed through there? So it's not crystal clear. That's what you don't want to happen, but it's not the end of the world. So now you can see that there's still the insides that need to come off. So what I use is just a little X-Acto knife. And I'm just going to carefully pry up on those edges. To get those off. X-Acto knife, just the point on your X-Acto knife works really well for that. This one's a lot smaller than what you guys have. It's like half the size, this stencil, to fit on this block. Oh, there it is. So it'll be a little bit easier. Just being careful because your paint is still a little bit damp. You don't want to mess it up. Just do that through the whole design. Depending on which one you chose, you'll have less or fewer of these little bits to pull out. Ta-da! Oh, one more. I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm just enough to get the tip of the X-Acto knife underneath the, whoops, try to steady this camera. And you can see how I've got that bleed through, like it's kind of bad around the B. That's what happens if you use too much. So less is always more. If you have to do 3 coats, do 3 coats. Try not to get it too bad, too fast, because you end up with that. And it just makes it look a little bit messy. But then at the same time, it kind of makes it look more handmade, right? And that's kind of what we're going for. So now what we're going to do, dry. Yeah, dry super fast. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to grab my brush again. And I'm just going to show you how to do your clear coat so you don't smear your design. Because the whole issue with the reactivation, you don't want that to happen. So I'll show you what I have discovered, one of those little tricks to getting your to seal your stenciling or your stamping or whatever you've done without smearing it all over the place. So the trick is just put some of your clear coat on your brush and then just quickly swipe it over your piece. It doesn't have to be fancy. You just want a quick swipe. Just like that. Up here I can fix that a little bit. That's it. It's not, you can see that it's not 100% coverage. It's just swiped on there. You don't want to play with it too much. You don't want to be brushing back and forth because it will reactivate in seconds and then you will start seeing runs. It'll just smear. So I'm going to get this to dry here quickly just using the heat gun. And get rid of some of these runs. And then we're going to do the full coat. So I will be right back. I'm just going to heat gun here. When you're using the heat gun on clear coat, always keep it moving, or blow dryer. Blow dryer works awesome too. Always keep it moving. Don't hold it in one spot because your clear coat will burn and bubble. So you don't want that to happen. So, doesn't take very long. That's all dry now. Now I can go over with my clear coat again and do a better job and not be scared of overbrushing and smearing my white all over my red. Super important when you are stamping or stenciling with red over white, or any color over white actually. And you don't want any big globby runs. It just doesn't look as nice and it takes longer to dry. There you go. So second coat went on there and it's all nice and neat and pretty looking. I'm going to dry that quickly. There we go. That is how you get the stenciling. So, if you guys have any questions, I know this whole kit thing was kind of come out of left field. I really wanted to have you guys in here doing these in person. That's always my goal. I always like having you guys in here. I like being able to help you through the projects. I like being able to teach you guys how to do the techniques and all of the things. And classes are always so much fun. I'm very, very lucky to have an excellent group of ladies that have been coming to my classes from all over the place. And I appreciate every single one of you. And I appreciate the fact that you guys were okay with this whole switch to the kit. It's taken me a little bit of figuring out how to do specifically this class with the sleighs because the plan was to use the stamps. And unless you are already someone who owns some of the Iron Orchid Design stamps, that just wasn't an option. I didn't want to say, well, you can have this kit, but now I have to sell you a stamp set at the same time. It's tough out there for everybody, which is why I'm talking off this like top of my head, and I'm not very good at that. So my brain is going all over the place, and I'm gonna drop this camera someday. Basically, I still wanted you guys to get this kit, this project. It's cute, it's fun, it's just a fun little project, and I wanted you guys to have it. So I'm glad you all chose to go with the kit instead of a refund, which would have been fine too, but I'm still glad you guys all got the kit. Please send me pictures. I'd love to see how they turn out. And again, send me any questions you have about. The only part I'm really worried about you guys with is the stencils, just that you don't have any trouble with them. I've just never done them even in class. So to send them out to you to deal with it on your own, I feel bad about that. I wish I could do it in person with you all, but out of my hands, unfortunately. So, but I hope that all gives you all the information you need. And I just wanted to say thank you for sticking with me through this, for accepting the kit versus the workshop, for just supporting my small little business here in the middle of nowhere. I appreciate it so much. Every single one of you that walks in the door, that orders online, that messages me, that interacts with my page, my Facebook page. You guys are awesome. I never ever thought that this little store would end up being what it is, and it would never have happened without all of you. So, on that note, I'm a crier, so I'm going to go before I cry. I wish you guys all a very, very Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart, and thank you very much.